Okay.
Sashi perki yuk cheng me to Jamri ravlinji Nihidek yan pari Sangen shing du me che rubaigi Roko nandan shing la Je pak jo Yetsun lama dam pa kienan Kecha ki kala Yen se tu chin tri Jita san pe du che zin ma la Sa ge chu ki cha pa Vap tu so Idam Gurat Nama Dalakanya Chayami.
Okay, so this is our last teaching on the text, is it, Lars?
Also, next week as well on the text.
On the same topic?
On the same topic, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Okay, so we won't sing the prayer. I'll just say it in English. I'll just say the thought in English, okay? So put the prayer away. Put the prayer away, but that's exactly. We'll just say the words in English. Sometimes it's more meaningful. We say it from our hearts. So in that prayer, what it's saying is, so we think, okay, I'm going to rely upon, if we're Buddhists already, if we're not, you can't say it, don't need to say it, but you think I'm going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha until I'm enlightened. And the second line is, I'm going to listen to these teachings to think about the meaning, to see if there's some advice I can take, and specifically advice about how to help others, but actually to help ourselves as well, how to die well, so that we ensure a virtuous karmic seed is triggered at that time, so that we can ensure we get another decent human rebirth, so we can carry on practicing our spiritual path, so we can continue getting enlightened and not kind of lose the plot. That's the specific motivation for this teachings we're doing here. Just think like that, for my sake and the sake of others. Okay, so like I said, let's summarize so far. The essence of all this advice in this book. So the book is like a third of it is maybe maybe a quarter is all the different chapters. First of all, the general teachings about karma and the death and the process and what happens, blah. Then the main part of the book are the advice in a chronological order, starting with what to do the weeks and months before death, what to do the days before, the hours before, at the time of death, what to do the days after death, what to do, and then what to do the weeks after. So it's a gradual process, you know, and there's masses. There's lots of things we can learn. As Lama Zopa says, you know, our job is the mind. I mean, the doctors and nurses, their job is the body, you know. Our job is the mind. And this is the main thing. So we looked at the 8 stages of death. We've discussed a little bit about the Vajrayana way of describing it. We looked at a little bit, but the crucial point, the essential point, as Rinpoche points out, is that, you know, if we want to help anybody in this life when they need us most, is at the time of death, which is completely opposite to what we tend to think, you know, because why is very clear, because the karmic seed from our billions of karmic seeds stored in our mind, that will be the one that will determine your next life, is triggered as the death process starts, before you stop breathing. It's quite technical, it's quite specific. So we can be around a person then, whether it's the mouse or the dog or your grandmother, helping them feel comfortable, helping them be peaceful. And that's the major one, because intense levels of grasping, this is the thing, Rinpoche talks about this. At the time of death, particularly intense levels of grasping, which brings incredible fear, naturally rises. And so it's like a person who's got a lot of fear crossing over a 6-lane freeway. You help them across, you help them navigate it without losing the plot. So in other words, the job is to help the person's mind be peaceful. That's why it's ideal not to be totally unconscious at the time of death. That's why it's ideal to be conscious, you know, so that the person can know you're present and can feel calmed by your presence as they start to go through this process. So it's really quite precise and quite technical, you know. So the more we know about it, then the more we can help. And then, of course, we'll be ready for our own death. And this whole book started, like I told you, Rinpoche was teaching in France years ago at the center there. And one of his students came up and said her father, her old daddy, had died. He was like 90 or something. And she said, I didn't know what to do. So of course, Rinpoche is surprised. I mean, he's been a Buddhist for years, but that's how we all are, because we don't like thinking about death. So he then started teaching this, you know, which is the basis of this book. So this Rinpoche, being who he is, has so many practices he likes to recommend, so many mantras, so many different practices. And so what we decided was best, because there's so much of it, to put them all in the back together, numbered from 1 to 87. So it's like a handbook. And so you can, Rinpoche says, if you're going to choose any practice at all, even just choose one, Medicine Buddha, you cannot beat it. It's one of the best. But if you can be more precise, you can choose this one or that one according to the person. So you learn to become familiar with this, So, and then of course you have to know the person's mind well, because if your mummy's a Catholic, you don't tell her Buddhist things. If your mummy's a communist, you don't shove religion down her throat. So you be wise and skillful, knowing the person's mind and knowing how to help them. Some people don't mind what you do. Other people, a friend of mine who died, she's a Buddhist, and she was very precise what she wanted. She didn't want people reading her prayers. She didn't want this, she didn't want that. So let her, have what is right for her. It's so important, because the trouble is when people are old and sick, we just kind of boss them around, no interest in what they want. So it's really important to know the person, to know what is right for them. And of course, all this assumes that you've got the power to make these decisions. If you're just one of the family of 20 people and you're down the lowest on the totem pole, you can't do much at all, when my sister died, it was always a bit funny, really. I mentioned it. There are 7 siblings, and Jan was the oldest. And we were all brought up Catholic, but everybody had given it up. In fact, has gone against religion in many ways, but I'm the only one who's got some kind of spiritual, like a practice, and therefore a view about death. And for them, because she died, she fell down the stairs and she stopped, she was brain dead. And then, it was the day before I was going to be in Australia anyway, and I got there early. And I said to them, please, can you leave her on the machine until I get there? She said, Robina, she's dead. I said, I know she's dead. Just can you leave her breathing, please? Because technically, as we know, Buddhism says she's not dead. As long as she can breathe and her body is warm and toasty, that can only happen because consciousness is there, mind or consciousness. A subtle level, of course, the sensory had stopped. She was brain dead, but her subtle mind was there. And I got there, and then of course I had to be very careful, because everyone's got different views, and they didn't like all the religious part. So because my sister, I joke about it, because my sister, I told her, I think I said this, she was a fanatic Australian rules football follower. Called Australian rules football. It's huge in Australia. It's massive. It's unique to Australia. Totally weird game, completely different from rugby, different from soccer, completely different. And she was a total fanatic from the age of 4 for the Sydney Swans. And so my sisters, even and my brother, singing the Sydney Swans football team song in the hospital bed, and there's me trying to be all kind of holy and quiet and sing mantras in her ear. I couldn't dominate. I sort of blurted out at one point, can we have a bit of peace in here, please? And they're all shouting and yelling, because as far as she's concerned, she's dead. They're concerned. So anyway, it was a very interesting experience for me just to sit with her. And then once she'd stopped breathing, as far as they were concerned, she was dead. So they all left. But what was interesting, of course, the Buddhist approach is you don't try to bring all your emotions. You don't shout and yell and cry and touch her body. And they're all there, and there they were holding her feet and crying. Some of them, it was okay. It was showing affection. What can I say? So I didn't have the power to say, stop doing it. So that's what you have to be wise. You don't want your sisters and your family chucking you out because you're bossing them around. So if you've got complete control and you can run the show, then that's fantastic. You can do lots of things. So I did what I could, and I was curious. I have no idea whether her mind had left. And then once she stopped, then the family all left, and they went downstairs, and I stayed there for about 5 hours. Then I had to leave. Then the nurses were very kind. So anyway, yeah. So also, yeah, that's all. So that's all, just that. So these are the things that are really important. And the crucial piece to really remember too, this business about the subtle mind. This is unique to the Buddhist view. It's not the Western view at all. And because we're positing this view that even though the person looks dead, the mind is still there. And there is a whole chapter on showing how you judge whether the mind has gone. It's not that easy to know. My sister, in the text it says, and in the chapter it says, if there's heat above the heart chakra, even when the rest of the body is cold, that's an indication that the mind is still there. And that can be up to 3 days. Well, I only had 5 hours. And so, of course, her belly was still warm, because that's all the gut, Her feet were cold, her head was cold, but the belly was still warm. So I couldn't tell whether her mind had gone or not. I had no idea. I couldn't tell. It was hard to know. So anyway, I had to leave anyway. So these things. So the thing is, though, if a person's in a coma, if a person's asleep, we think, oh, well, they can't hear. And so we don't care. But this is the time to be really extra careful, to be so quiet, because the subtle mind can be conscious of what's going on. I mean, the number of people who have out-of-body experiences, who in their dreams, they know what's going on, they can see, they can hear, like clairvoyant experiences. Because the subtle mind is more powerful, it can have these experiences. And lots of stories about people, how they, you know, can be helped even though we're in a coma. I always tell the story, and I'll tell it here. A friend of mine years and years ago in Sydney was in hospital in a deep coma. She was in the what do they call it? The ICU or something, I forget. And she was, you know, wired up. They said they didn't even think she'd come back alive, you know. So her husband gave me permission to go in there, and I'd come in late and say prayers to her, sing prayers in her ear, and that was it. So for several days. But what I'd done was asked the students of two of the lamas she was very close to, Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche and Sakya Trinzen, I'd asked the students to please ask the lamas to pray for her. So every now and again, I'd say to her in her ear, Judy, Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche is praying for you. Judy, His Holiness Sakya Trinzen's praying for you. So anyway, 2 weeks later, she came out of the coma and she was, you know, perky and happy and everything was good. And she told me the only thing she could remember from that 2 weeks, she said it was this husky voice. Initially, she didn't know it was me. She thought it was a blue lady coming through the window saying exactly those words. Now that no one can pretend that, you know, no one told her, nobody else but me knew that because I'd whispered in her ear. So that's powerful to know, you know. So when you can hear those kind of things, then you really can be confident, whether it's your pussycat or whatever, even though they're unconscious, they can be blessed by the power of the words of the Buddha, the mantras and so on. There's so many examples like this, you know, rather than just thinking, oh, well, they're in a coma, nothing you can do. That's the major extra piece that the Buddhist view can add, you know. So then that's why to be so quiet in those circumstances. It doesn't mean if you make a noise that they notice, but some might. And the other thing is too, as you're dying, especially if a person's been there for weeks and months and getting old and becoming more weak, as you're slowly getting weaker, what's happening is your mind is becoming, the grosser level of your consciousness is gradually stopping functioning, not literally the death process yet. And then that means your subtle mind is becoming more prevalent, which means you're far more sensitive to the slightest noise, the slightest distress. Even the slight noise can be so distressing for the person, which is why, like I've said, with respect to nurses and doctors, dying in a hospital is about the worst thing possible. There's so much noise and dramas. I mean, recently in New York, a friend of mine, he's like a Buddhist, he's like 97, you know, Freddie, was in this old place, I don't know, some kind of place, not quite like a hospital, but like a hospital. And initially he was in a room with two people, and the guy who was taking care of him, who had kind of power of attorney to do Freddie's wishes, had him in a room with two people. And then the other guy would be chatting and watching the television, people were gossiping to him, and people would barge past Freddie's bed, the lights were on, and sometimes you'd walk in and he was half out of the bed with his clothes off, you know. So it was like really distressing. And so luckily there was money in his pocket for it. So the kind man taking care of Freddie got him a room on his own and had people coming in just sitting with him 24 hours a day. So the Buddhists would come in and we'd do mantras and prayers for him, you know. So that was really important, because even though he was unconscious, we think, oh, well, it doesn't matter, he's unconscious, but he was clearly distressed. His legs were out of the bed. He kept trying to get his clothes off, you know. He wasn't happy, clearly. And that's all happening at a subtler level. So it's so important to make the place conducive, peaceful, quiet, pleasing, especially when they're still conscious, not to make it messy and cluttered. I mean, we've got sensory consciousness. And so especially if you're sick and you're living in a room day after day, it's very depressing if you open your eyes and it's all dark and dingy and smelly. So you make the environment beautiful to lift the person, you know. This one person, this nun I mentioned before, same age as me, Trisha, who ran our center in India, in Root Institute in Bodh Gaya, same age as me, born year of the monkey, 1944. she was in Australia visiting family, and suddenly she got discovered she had cancer. She's going to be dead in a month or two. So Lama Zopa said, stay in Australia and find a place to die. So she got a place just near Chenrezig Institute, and it was beautiful. People looked after her, had beautiful views, lovely, open, spacious. So if you're half asleep in bed and you open your eyes, you can be pleased by what you're seeing. So these things are so important, you know. As Rinpoche mentions also, the people who are around the person, it's so important. And if you're in charge, you can't be like a policeman, but you really can be aware that whatever goes on in that room is for the benefit of the dying person. Everybody else comes second, you know. So if you've got people who cry and make a sound and so attached to the dying person, you keep them out of the way. You keep the pets out of the way for the sake of the person more than anything. Because if you're attached to your pet, you want to do everything you can to calm the person's mind, which means calm their attachment and their fears. So you keep the things that they're attached to out of the way. You don't be like a policeman, but you be very wise. Everything should be done to make it as conducive as possible for the person to be relaxed and peaceful. And even as they get sicker and sicker and getting closer to death, as Lama Zopa says, the only sound should be prayers and mantras. In other words, everything that goes on in that room should be for the benefit of the dying person. It's I mean, it's education we all need, as Lama Zopa says, instead of just panicking, you know. So as I said, 2/3 of the book is all these different practices, so many practices you can do. We went through briefly the chapters, you know. But I really, really advise getting this book. It's so, so helpful. And just becoming familiar. So, yeah, that's what we've been discussing. So please now, there's more we can talk about, the things to do after you die. But bring your questions now. It's important to have questions. Anything
yes,
at all that
Robina?
I want to know. Yeah.
Honorable Robina,
Just
what happens if there's nobody to take care of you?
What do you mean by what happens?
I mean, what are you supposed to do if there's nobody to take care of you in order to die?
You mean yourself? You mean yourself?
Yeah, if there's nobody else.
If you have no one.
Yeah, if you have no one to take care of you and you die alone.
Well, it depends on your mind, doesn't it? It depends on what practice you've done. I mean, if you've got a practice and you know what's going on, you'll be fine. And if you don't have a practice, you'll be in trouble. I mean, it's sort of obvious. And most people, tragically, don't have a person to help their minds. We just drag people out of their brains thinking, oh, aren't they peaceful? That's the best we can do, which is so unfortunate. That's why we need to practice now, isn't it? So we can be ready, even if we don't have anyone. So we can be ready. This is the point. Because that the time of death is like this is really, it's like a crucial stage in our development. We go from one body to the next, and we have to learn to navigate it as well as we can. That's the Buddhist approach. This is not it might be the Christian approach is to be ready for heaven. The materialist approach is not this. It's very clear. So all the things that are important for the materialist view can be similar, but not, you know, there's no concern about you know, keeping the person conscious. I mean, in fact, the more unconscious they are, as far as we're concerned, the better, right? Because we, you know, so it's quite different, quite different. But clearly, you have to have that's why you have to have a practice. And if you practice thinking about impermanence all your life, then death won't be a surprise. And if death's not a surprise, and you have a practice, and you, especially if you have a highest yoga tantra practice, like we read last week, I think, you can take empowerments, you can do your practice every day. It's like anything. I mean, if you don't know how to drive, and then suddenly you got your driving test, well, if you haven't learned to drive, you're going to be in trouble. It's very simple. If you've practiced all your life, you'll be ready at the driving test. It's not meant to make us scared. It's just that we don't like thinking about these things, isn't it? Don't you agree, though? Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody there, class? Anyone else?
I might have a question. Consider a person who is a little sensitive towards having religion shut down their throat. How much should I stress putting saying mantras rather than just being caring and loving and
you use your wisdom, Lars. It's obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you know, the key thing is to be warm and friendly and kind and to make the person feel secure. So one of the major things, if the person is conscious, is you talk about things to this person. So obviously they're not interested in God or Buddha. So obviously you don't talk about that. So you'd emphasize their good qualities. You'd talk about their qualities. You'd be uplifting and kind of warm and open with them. You'd encourage them to talk. I mean, you just use your common sense. But the fact of the matter is, many of the prayers and mantras, I mean, lots of people, we know Tibetan prayers are very popular. People buy the CDs, so people don't think of it as religion, they just think of it as lovely music. So if you think of a mantra that way, it's not shoving it down their throat at all, Lars. It's just a lovely sound, very peaceful sound that can be perfectly fine for somebody, so use our wisdom. I mean, don't be like this one Buddhist fellow who was a Buddhist, and his wife was a Buddhist, and his wife was the one who was dying, and he was really horrible. He'd wake her up like six times a day and force her to do her prayers. I mean, how mean of him. She was exhausted, the poor lady. I mean, he didn't think that he should do his prayers for her, but he made her do them. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, one of the big practices is if let's say, you're dying and your friend is with you, they would know your practices and they would read them to you. So you can just listen to them. You understand? So you just got to use your common sense. The key thing is to help the person feel secure and comfortable and peaceful and know they can, because when we're worried and fearful, we need someone to rely upon, just to be there for us. That's our role, What else, people? And the same with animals. I mean, so many people want to know how to help their animals, are really afraid of what to do because so many people have so much attachment to their animals and so much compassion for them and worry about them. So just to help your animals in just the same way, just the same way. Help them hear mantras that'll make their minds so peaceful. I mean, so many stories like that. One friend, because these days, unfortunately, veterinarians, they're kind people, they encourage the killing of the animals, because they say it's for the sake of the animal. So this one friend, she was so worried what to do with her big old dog. He was grumpy and looking like he was dying and he wouldn't eat. And the vet kept saying, you've got to put him down, and she didn't want to do that, but she didn't know what to do, what was best for the dog. I didn't try to force her. I said, well, why don't you just play some medicine Buddha mantras and see what happens? And he became completely peaceful. He ate his dinner. He was more relaxed. He was easygoing because the sound is so powerful. The sound of these mantras so peaceful that it works at a subtle level, and surprising how it can help, So we can try these things. And especially also, this is the other point that's so important, like when we understand attachment, and we don't very well, when we do, it's really so totally all-consuming. And the energy of attachment, one of the energies of attachment, it always wants something. It always feels something's missing. So whenever you put something in front of a person, their attachment will grasp onto it. So that's what happens in old people's homes. Some of them, they put on the television and screaming loud. So the person's attachment will grasp at whatever's there. But if you don't put anything there, the attachment has nothing to grasp at, so it will calm down. So I remember very well I might have mentioned this one lady I went to one time, it sort of had a little bit of some spiritual path, but not much, had cancer, and people were sort of rotating in coming to help her. But you could see she was really distressed, really not happy. Her poor mind was so distressed. And this is the other point. We need to distinguish between physical pain and mental anguish. They're quite separate, So the animals as well. So this woman, I hadn't sat with many people, so I just sat with her and I was thinking, well, how can I help? So I just sung mantras very quietly. And this is the point about your attachment. If there's a pleasing thing there that calms you, your attachment goes into that and you can settle, So usually all the time her television was on, watching the news all the time. So attachment grasps onto it. And, people always talk about letting go. Well, you can't let go if something's in front of you. But if there's nothing in front of you, you can relax. So the interesting point was, when I left, she liked Lama Yeshe, and I gave them, this is 20 years ago, I gave them the old-fashioned, what do you call those tapes? You put it in a video machine, not a DVD. It was a tape recording, in the video machine. Who?
Video cassette, VHS.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one, yeah. So I gave them a teaching of Lama Yeshe to put in the television to play for her. So apparently the television broke. So she had no Lama Yeshe, but she didn't have television. She didn't have news either. And she died within a couple of hours because her mind was able to rest. These are the things that are really important to understand. The mind has to be resting. So the less garbage you have all around them, the less pets, the less noise, the less television, the less talking and chatting. We think it's being loving. It's not. It can be, but it's not helpful. It needs to be peaceful, peaceful. And the mind can settle and therefore be more virtuous. This is really important to understand. Yes, Ariella.
Good evening, Venerable. I would like to ask, please, when you keep saying to hear mantras, to play the mantras, them, us, can you be a little bit more specific? Which mantras
They're in the book, sweetheart. They're all in the book, darling.
Oh, okay.
I'm describing. I mean, there's Medicine Buddha, Tara, Chenrezig, any mantras you like, anything at all. And there's so many mentioned. Lama Zopa must mention like 50 of them. And some are just very popular and easy to find, like Medicine Buddha. You'll find like on YouTube, there's Lama Zopa chanting it. That's a lovely one to have. Yes. But
I found on YouTube a bardo chanting. Is that?
I don't know. You can find lots of things. It's up to you to find the one that you like and the lamas you trust. I mean, some people do rubbish. You have to get a good source,
Yes. Okay.
I mean, if you look up YouTube, Lama Zopa, Medicine Buddha, you'll find this 40-minute repeating of the mantra. It's very pleasing,
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. What else, people? Okay, so you have to, this is something urgent coming. You have to give me like 1 minute, just.
Yes, and that's also an opportunity for me to tell you all that Venerable Robina will be back from March twice a month, Thursdays. In March, it will be the Four Noble Truths, and then in April, it's going to be attachment, and after that, in May, it'll be emptiness, and then June, it'll be the 8 verses of mind training. And let's see what happens in autumn as well. So keep an eye for the newsletter or the calendar. I just wanted to have as much as possible for it. So yes, wonderful. I think Tara might post a link, but yes, she will. And it looks like the Venerable is going to be on tour as well in Europe, Turkey. So
Okay, I'm here. Okay, sorry. So go on, question. Again, repeat whatever somebody said, I forget. Or whatever I was talking about. What was it?
we were talking about mantras at the time of death, and you encouraged us.
Anybody ask any questions? Was there a question?
There
No,
wasn't
there
anything. There wasn't anything.
Okay, fine. Okay. So are there any more questions then? Yes. Madina, talk to me.
Yes, hello, Venerable. Thank you.
Good, darling.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this topic for quite a while, and I've read some pieces from the book, and I listened to your teachings also, not only for this one, but for quite a period of time. And I had this like inner feeling that obtaining an optimal human rebirth, like perfect human rebirth, is such a rare opportunity. But I think it is even more rare to die properly, like to have a perfect death. Because, and I don't know, it is a little bit like depressing also and scary.
Yeah.
Because there are so many obstacles to have this good experience during death.
That's right.
And, yeah, sometimes I don't know how to deal with it, because there are so much obstacles in like regular life, and I'm not sure if it will be possible, even though like to have aspirations to die well and to have all the circumstances into places and everything.
Okay. I hear you, exactly. I hear you. So what are your, so basically, let's be very blunt about it. What are your options? Here you are alive at this moment. So what are your options this second?
If I die this second,
No. What, right now you're still alive. You've stated this idea of you understand a perfect human rebirth. You understand it's quite difficult to have the right conditions. So given that, and here you are today alive, what will you do about it? What are you going to do about it? That's the question. What are you going to do about it? It's a bit like saying, you know, I know that sometime in the future, I'm going to have to drive on the freeway at 150 kilometers an hour with 6 lanes of traffic. And I'm really worried about it. And I just don't know what to do. And my God, it seems so difficult. Then my question is, what are you going to do about it? That's the question. Stop being horrible. So that's the question. You are alive at this minute. So given that you've got this event coming in the future, what will you do about it right now? That's all. That's the only thing to ask yourself. And so what's your answer?
well, if I think in terms of death, my answer often arises like, I will stop non-virtues. I will stop creating negative karma. I have to be like very cautious, and also to be sure that I have some people around me that will perpetuate these.
No, that's too much. That's saying that you're worrying about what the cars will look like on the freeway and in the future event. What will you do now to ensure that the event will be perfect? Because that's the point. That's what's doable. It's a doable thing. So you just, in other words, you have to learn to know how to drive. So here you have to learn to know what impermanence is. You have to have a practice. You live in vows, you purify every day, and you prepare yourself by living your life perfectly. There is no other answer. You don't have an option. That's it. That's it. That's the answer. Prepare for it by living your life perfectly, best you can. Then you will create all the causes for a perfect death. Because it's not mysterious, because this is the point. We are the ones who create our own reality. So if you live your life every day, you appreciate the dangers coming in the future or whatever, you want a human rebirth, you want to die well. So what are you going to do about it? The answer is, I'm going to continue my practice. I will live in my vows. I'm going to do every day. I'll think about impermanence. And just that's it. There is no other solution. There is no other answer. It's not mysterious. So then as you practice every day, you remind yourself every day of this, and you keep practicing. And that is how you prepare for that event that will come. And then you'll be effortlessly able to navigate the 6 lanes on the freeway at 150 kilometers an hour, because you've prepared. It's not a mystery. There's no point in being depressed about it. I know what you're saying, but it's good that you're thinking about it. Most people don't. So the answer is practice every day. That's it. There is no other solution. There's no other answer. It's not mysterious. It's not crossing your fingers. It's quite technical. It's quite powerful. You live in your vows. You practice every day. You deal with impermanence, and that's it. That's the answer, sweetheart. That's the answer. It's not like crossing your fingers and hoping for best. That's the answer. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
You hear me? That's
Yes.
it. So relax and enjoy and practice, sweetie pie.
All right.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
That's it. There's no other answer. There's nothing hidden. Do you understand?
I understand. Yes, I do.
And help other people. Help other people get used to impermanence. Help other people die well. All of this is creating the cause for you to have a good life and a good death. Do you understand, darling? And
Yes.
the other aspect, now I think I'll talk about this now, I forgot. The other part is, this is the part that's really, for me, when I'm working on this book of Lama Zopa, has really shifted from my mind, is we talk about preparing for death, but actually we're preparing for the next life, if you're a Buddhist. Do you understand my point? And that's a very different way to say it. Because when you say prepare for death, we kind of visualize it and dying and the freaking out and the worries and the fears. But if we think I'm going to prepare for the next life, that's more optimistic. It's more kind of positive, you know? So how do you do that? I repeat the answer. Because if you create the right causes and live in vows and purify every day and take the empowerments and live in your bodhisattva vows and live in your tantric vows and do your practice as well as you can every day, that is everything you do that will produce a really excellent future rebirth. And death will be easy, because you'll be looking forward to the next life. That's a really important concept. And that was something that really struck me when I was working on this book of Rinpoche, editing it. So this is where it also comes in, this business about Pure Land. So anyway, are we communicating here, sweetheart? Mandina, not Mandina.
Yes, we are. Actually, this.
Let me understand. Go on. Yeah.
Yes,
go.
actually, this thought, this approach about thinking about next life, I tried it for some time, and it was more uplifting, because I thought like applying this current experience, like having this very good life now, must be I've done something right in my previous life. So
that's right.
if I done this at least one, I am able to repeat it.
That's right, darling.
And in this way, it
All
was easier to practice. Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you
In other words,
for.
we've got to, yeah. So in other words, the real thing is to demystify this whole process. And that's the Tibetan Buddhists especially. All this is technical training in how to think and how to act and how to be, which is the very process itself, which makes death suddenly become more in perspective, and it'll be something we'll be afraid of, and we'll be able to move forward and get the life that we create the karma to get, because we create the causes. We're not sitting here waiting for someone to bless us and give us another rebirth. When we realize karma and that we are in charge, we'll get more confidence. Do you understand, Marina?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
So when you understand the causes you must have created to be who you are now, then you just have to repeat those. You've got the recipe. It's all there. So this is where it comes. This is where the discussion about the Pure Lands comes in. All these years I've been hearing about. You hear about the Pure Lands, blah blah blah. I go, oh yeah, Pure Lands. Then I hear about these people, a particular group of people, especially in Chinese Buddhists, I think, who really like Amitabha's Pure Land. And basically, I used to think about it as just like an alternative to the Christian heaven. And I thought, I don't want to know about that. That's kind of boring, So then I remember working on this book, and this is years ago now, 2012, about 2012, it's 10 years ago. Lama Zopa, after his stroke, one of the first teachings he gave was an Amitabha initiation in San Jose in California. And Venerable Holly, the nun, one of the attendants, she sent me the rough transcript of some of the teachings Rinpoche gave about the benefits of wanting to go to Amitabha's Pure Land. So then, and I read this, and then I realized, because also I kept thinking the book wasn't finished. This was one of the major pieces missing. So so Rinpoche said that. Okay. So let's talk about first what a Pure Land is, because I know it's a bit abstract if we don't understand the Vajrayana teachings. Okay, so now, what is a Pure Land? First of all, we've got gross consciousness, subtle consciousness, and literally what they call very subtle or extremely subtle consciousness. And there's this and death is this gradual deconstruction of these 8 stages, at each stage, different pieces ceasing to function. See, like a gradual deconstruction of all the components of a person, all the way down to get to the very subtle level. So now, in our daily life, the gross consciousness, which is the sensory consciousness, is inextricably linked, obviously, with this gross body, And the world we live in is at that level. We have these objects of the senses, which is the physical world we occupy. The world out there, the earth, the water, the sky, the trees, the air, all the different objects of the senses. So these are karmically created by us over eons and eons of lifetimes. And the more we understand karma, the more this makes sense, I mean, the feeling we have, isn't it? It's another point now. When we just don't really think about these things. If you're a Christian, you think God made this earth and gave it to you as a gift. If you're a materialist, it's just the way it is. This is life. But the Buddhist one is, it's your karmic appearance. We create. And this is a point for Madina too. The more we're confident that we create our own reality, and it's not a joke. It's not just something out there from its own side that we got plonked into by somebody else, a creator or mummy or daddy. It's the result of our own past actions. So there's an environment. We're a person, we have a mind and a body, and we have an environment. We don't just float around in the sky, do we? We have an environment that's suitable to this kind of physical energy. So now you've got subtle mind. And the only time we experience our subtle mind is when we dream. We have moments of clairvoyance, moments of sensitivity to others. You're kind of touching on the edges of your subtle consciousness. And when you get single-pointed concentration in the shamatha technique, then you begin to really access these subtler levels. We don't really access subtle consciousness until you've understood the Vajrayana teachings, but you definitely subdue your grosser level of consciousness, your sensory, and the grosser levels of conceptuality, and you begin to taste the subtler level of our cognition, which is incredibly powerful. And that level of mind can necessarily, because it's more subtle, can cognize phenomena that are more subtle, like the minds of others, the past, the future. Very powerful. So now people have experiences in their dreams, they have out-of-body experiences, they have all those kind of weird experiences. That's your subtle mind, and we're not in charge of it. It's kind of weird, you know, but we can become. So then in the Vajrayana practices, they really talk about this. Is subtle consciousness is not discussed in the sutra teachings or in the teachings about shamatha or anything. So in the Vajrayana teachings, you know, you've got your gross and you've got your subtle. So now, when we die, okay, so once you get to a high level of realizations, once you become a Buddha, okay, once you become a Buddha, this is the point now. You have achieved the purified aspect of your consciousness, and that's the subtlest level, and that is called the Dharmakaya. Simply speaking, it's enlightened mind, fully developed, not gross, no need for a gross body. It pervades the universe. It is in sync with reality. It is omniscient. It has, in other words, perfect wisdom that sees the minds of all beings, sees the past, sees the future. That's omniscient mind. That's finally our potential. That's a Buddha. Now, if you've achieved that, what made you achieve it is your wisdom, but what drove you to want to achieve it is your compassion. You must become a Buddha because I want to benefit sentient beings. But as in the Dharmakaya form, nobody can see you, nobody can hear you, because regular sentient beings are as thick as posts. So then, because you've been driven all those countless lives by your compassion to become this Buddha, then of course you're going to also want to be able to benefit them. And by even the lowest level bodhisattva, who's already realized emptiness, an Arya Bodhisattva, there's 10 stages of development to become a Buddha. Even the lowest level Bodhisattva has the capability, driven by their power, but driven by their compassion, to manifest their own mind in at least 100 different bodies or forms, whatever you like, around the world in the universe to benefit sentient beings. And you can turn into a table, you can conjoin your mind with a flower, you can conjoin your mind with a hell being's body, you can conjoin your mind with anything because you've got that power. You can manifest in at least 100 different forms, bodies to benefit sentient beings. And as you progress up to Buddhahood, you literally can manifest countless bodies for the sake of sentient beings. So that gross level of body, that's called the Nimanakaya, the emanation body. You can manifest countless forms of those depending on the situation of the sentient being you're trying to help. That's called the emanation body. And in a way, that's the grosser body that the Buddha has the power to manifest in whatever form you like. That's why I always tell that story, and maybe you heard it, and I'll tell it here, about the time His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetans escaped from Tibet, 5960. And of course, all the lamas and His Holiness were desperate to find land in India where they could rebuild their monasteries and have a place where they can pass on the knowledge from the older holy beings into the minds of the younger beings before the Dharma ran out, before it all just disappears. So they needed land very badly. And out of incredible kindness, the Indian government was negotiating with the Tibetans to give them hundreds of thousands of acres of land, of forest, right down south of Bangalore in South India. So there's all this story is something like this. Lama Zopa told this story. So there's all this negotiating with the Tibetan minister that His Holiness sent down from Dharamsala, where the Tibetan government in exile is based up in the mountains, 12 hours north of Delhi. So His Holiness had sent down his appropriate Tibetan minister to meet the Indian in the government office in Delhi. So this poor Indian, the Tibetan fellow, got fed up and couldn't get a meeting, you know. So he went back to Dharamsala, fed up. And his older said, don't worry about it. Go back down immediately. So he took the train down. He used to have to drive a taxi all the way down the mountain to Pathankot station. You'd climb on the train, and then you'd spend 12 hours on the train overnight getting down to Delhi. So he got down to Delhi and he went into the Indian government office. And on that particular day, the Indian minister's little boy was in the office. So he was chatting to the Tibetan, and he said that he wanted a dog. So of course the Tibetan minister was so happy to help, you know, to make the daddy happy. So he went out and he saw the sadhu, an Indian sadhu, a holy man, and a dog. And he said, can I buy your dog? So he bought the dog. He gave the dog to the little Indian boy. The little boy was happy, ran to his daddy, and daddy was happy, of course. So everything kind of worked, you know. And so as Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, the sadhu and the dog were manifestations of the Dalai Lama's mind. So he is said to be a Buddha. Now, we can't tell. We see this nice, friendly Indian Tibetan man, don't we? But if he's a Buddha, he is manifesting these Nirmanakaya forms, these emanation bodies, which can be visible to ordinary people, in countless forms throughout countless universes simultaneously. Now, of course, this is science fiction to us. It's like insane, you know? But this is the capability. It's all in the text. It's all that shows the power of holy beings. Now, that's the grosser form of the body that the Buddhas can manifest in. So gross consciousness and gross body, at the moment we're stuck in this body. We can't manifest anything. We can't remember most of what we do because we're deluded. But as we progress, as we become a bodhisattva and a Buddha, we can utilize this power, and we can and we can transform our mind. We can conjoin our mind with the elements and turn into anybody we damn well like. So that dog and that sadhu looked like a dog and looked like a sadhu. But that wasn't a dog and wasn't a sadhu. If it was the Dalai Lama's mind manifesting, he is pretending to be a dog, pretending to be a sadhu. And that's the way to think about even the Dalai Lama. You see, Buddhas don't need bodies. Buddhas are way past needing any kind of body whatsoever. So but Dalai Lama is a Buddha, the only reason he's in a body is out of his incredible compassion, and due to the karma of the Tibetan people, and now the karma of the entire world, that we've got this man in this Tibetan body, right? But that's out of his compassion. He doesn't need it. This is quite a shocking concept. We've got to understand this. So that's one of his countless emanations. We see the Dalai Lama, but he's manifesting at this moment in time. Talk about dogs and sadhus, I mean, in countless bodies all the time. That's their power. So a Buddha has wisdom, compassion, and power. Now, that's the grosser level of body that you and I could see. We mightn't see the Dalai Lama when we see the dog, you know, but that's why they say, Tibetans have a saying, you don't know who anyone is, so don't judge. So anyway, now we've got the subtler mind and the subtler level at which the Buddha's mind can manifest. And that's where the Pure Lands come in. That's the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. That's the subtler manifestation of the Buddha's mind. So only the Arya bodhisattvas can see that one. The great tantric yogis who've achieved realized emptiness, who are bodhisattvas, only they can see that one. It's a bit like, you know, like it's a subtle level. So your grosser level can't see it. So that's the form. So they manifest in these bodies. And all the Buddhas are the Dharmakaya, which is their pure subtle consciousness. And then all the Buddhas can manifest in the Nirmanakaya form to go around the world looking to benefit sentient beings, as a dog, a sadhu, who knows what. And then you've got the Sambhogakaya, and that's the form, that's what's described in the Vajrayana. All these different Buddhas you see in the Vajrayana, hundreds of them, thousands, male, female, peaceful, wrathful, many legs, one leg, green, blue, and basically it's psychology, it's Buddhist psychology. Every one of those deities or Buddhas in the Vajrayana is a manifestation at the Sambhogakaya level, the more subtle level, of different psychological qualities. It really literally is psychology, but not how we think of it. That's what it is. So Tara, she, green, holding this, doing that. Each piece of her is like a visual language, and she represents the particular quality of a Buddha called power, this action energy. Chenrezig is compassion. Manjushri is wisdom. Each one of those Buddhas is a depiction. Sure, it's a convention. It's a convention that she's green and got this arm and that leg. It's just a convention, but she represents certain qualities. Each of these Buddhas, and they are the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. So now, in the same way that at a gross level, we have an environment, that's the way karma ripens, this outside world, well, so do these holy beings. So do these Buddhas. That's what a Pure Land is. So when you look at those pictures, like those mandalas, all that is an architectural drawing of a Pure Land. It's an architectural drawing of their Pure Land. Each one is precise and related exactly to that Buddha. And it's the manifestation of that Buddha's mind. So these are places that only highly realized beings can cognize, because your mind, we haven't realized emptiness. And most of the Pure Lands, the abodes of all these Buddhas, are only available for cognition and experience of to the beings who realize emptiness or more. So the only one, as Lama Zopa's book mentions, is that's available to ordinary people is Amitabha's Pure Land. Whatever reason, ordinary people who haven't realized emptiness can, when they die, be reborn in this subtle form with those experiences, the mind more subtle, more radiant, more blissful, with divine appearances, hearing teachings 24 hours a day, seeing only the Buddha, no need for toilets and bodies and penises and vaginas and sex and drugs and rock and roll, because you're completely blissful. So you enjoy the Sambhogakaya kind of form, even though you're not a Buddha yet, and you can experience the Buddha at that level and hear teachings very quickly. Solely you want that birth because you want to get enlightened quickly. So since this understanding this, since this hearing this teaching from Rinpoche, I'm giving more details about it here. Now my prayer is every day, I mentioned this, I've got this, one of the prayers in the book. It's the prayer by Tsongkhapa to be reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land. So I've recited it on my iPad. When I hit the pillow, I turn it on and I listen to this prayer as I go to sleep, because my thought now is every day I aspire to be reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land. So as Lama Zopa says very simply in the book, and this is a bit shocking to us, the first cause of going there is, guess what? Wanting to. But that's not surprising. If you want an ice cream, guess what the first cause is? You've got to want it. I want an ice cream. That's called volition. That's intention. And that's karma. That drives everything. If there's no thought, I want an ice cream, I promise you will not go to the ice cream store. If you don't, so the thought, everything exists on the tip of the wish. This is the meaning of karma. But because we're not used to believing that we create the causes for things, we just think things happen to us and we're this victim and it gets plonked upon us, No, you create the cause. Are we communicating now? So go for that one, Nadina. And there's only two options. You either, as Lama Zopa says, you can pray, even aspire to go to other Pure Lands, but if you haven't got the realization, you just won't be able to. But this one is available for ordinary beings, whatever reason. So you aspire to, and you practice morality, you do your practice every day, you want to be there. And why you want to go there is because of bodhicitta, so I can get enlightened quickly, so that I can come back to the human realm and benefit sentient beings. And I love fast, so it sounds great. You get enlightened quickly. You can study 24 hours a day, no need for sex and drugs and rock and roll. Wow, how lovely. Then you can manifest in human bodies and be a benefit to other sentient beings and have as much sex and drugs as you like now, because you realized. You understand? Are we communicating, people? Nadina, comment?
Yeah, can I just a little bit elaborate on this topic, if I think about it correctly, if you can correct if I'm wrong. When I think,
ask the question, better.
Yeah, when I think about this Pure Land, in relation with death topic, of course, because it is abstract, as you mentioned in the beginning, what really helps me is to think about it like being enrolled into like a best college, like having best teachers, very good environment to learn a skill, to learn how to practice virtue, to learn how to be virtuous and abandon all this suffering and countless rebirths again and again, over and over. So if it's all right to think this way.
And that's in the sense what it is that it's a really excellent environment to become a Buddha very, very quickly. That's what Tsongkhapa says. And that's what Lama Zopa says. They have just, yeah, that's exactly right. Anything that helps your mind, sweetheart. But to understand it technically how it is a pure manifestation of subtle mind, and that we have that subtle mind. And so that's absolutely, but then so every day, so that's what I realized. That's right, it's perfect, Madina. But the other thing I realized too, working on this book, was really this understanding that we have to, like my answer to you was, what are you going to do about it? Because it's up to you. So I have decided I want to go to Amitabha's Pure Land. Then I think, well, I might have a human rebirth instead. That's the second best. If I miss the plane to the Pure Land, I'll get the human one. Then I always think, well, if I miss that plane, I'm in trouble. I'll go to there's only these two options. So the more precise we can be, the less fear comes, the more precise I can be with what I want. And this is the logic. If I think I've got to, I'm going to fly to Belgium to see Caroline in a month. And the first step has to be, I want it. This is really obvious. I want to go to Belgium to see Caroline. Then if I do nothing but say that, in 1 month's time, I won't be surprised I won't have the plane ticket because I didn't think to get a bloody plane ticket. So it's not enough to say I want. You then got to create the causes to get to Belgium. So once you want it, then you create the causes. I go get the air ticket, I pack my bag, and on the day I go to the flight and I climb on the airplane, and big surprise, I'll get to Belgium. This is life. This is how it is. And the more we can realize that we can learn to trust more and more this process of karma, rather than crossing our fingers and hoping that you'll be a good girl and that maybe one day someone will send you to the Pure Land or someone will send you to the Pure. It's schizophrenic to think that way. There's no concept of a creator who's going to reward us. We are the boss. Of course, karma is highly complex and there are billions of karmic seeds in our mind. And yes, anything can happen, but you've got to be confident. We've got to go one step at a time. Obstacles can come. Of course they can. And we all know in daily life, anything you really want to do and you create the causes to get it, you will be successful. I mean, it's just logic. It's how the world is. So keep moving, keep going, demystify this process, and know by wanting it, by creating the causes, by practicing morality, by living in vows, by having bodhicitta, they are the causes of this happening. Then guaranteed you'll have a peaceful death, and guaranteed you'll die well, and guaranteed you'll get the result that you created the cause to get. It's not mystical. Are we communicating?
Yes, thank you.
Madina. Have confidence, sweetheart. Keep moving every day. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. And look at that Tsongkhapa prayers. I love it. It takes about 10 minutes to recite it. I just hear myself reciting it as I go to sleep. Even better would be to memorize it. So I'm being lazy, not memorizing. So yes, Alona.
Hi, Venerable. Thank you for your teaching.
Okay.
I also reading this Tsongkhapa prayer and a chapter, and it talks about may the 8 bodhisattvas come in a magical way and show me the path to Sukhavati. Who are those 8 bodhisattvas? What are they? What do the
words say? What do the words say? Read the words.
As soon as my consciousness has left this body, may the 8 bodhisattvas come in a magical way.
There's a group of, I can't remember their names. There's a group of bodhisattvas. Maybe it's like Tara Chenrezig. There's a group of holy beings. There's 8. I don't remember who they are, but they're just holy beings who will take care of you. I have to Google it. The 8 bodhisattvas. I just think it's maybe the popular Buddhas, the 8 bodhisattvas. See what they say. Google God can tell us everything. Yeah, there it is. It's all those popular Buddhas. Chenrezig, Manjushri, Maitreya, Vajrapani, Samantabhadra, Kshitigarbha. There's 8 of them. Just Google it, you'll see. They're the 8 very popular Buddhas. They say bodhisattvas, but they're really actually Buddhas, So they will be there to protect you and guide your consciousness to Amitabha's Pure Land. You okay?
Yes, and at the end of this chapter, it's being unrealized, low in acquired knowledge and learning, saturated with wrong views.
Say it again. Say it again, Alona.
This is like a little prayer, or I know, I'm just wondering if that kind of purification little prayer, being unrealized, low in acquired knowledge and learning, saturated with wrong views and defilements, taking the lamas and deities as my witness, I confess my mistakes to the wise. Is
Yeah,
it
it
a
sounds wonderful.
purification?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is, darling. Every time you acknowledge your faults, acknowledge to yourself your failings, it's part of the process. Of course it is. Absolutely, darling.
It's like
course it is.
purification practice, right?
Well, it sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Good.
I love this chapter, Venerable, because it's when I read
Good.
it first time, it's exactly what I couldn't believe it. It's exactly what my deepest desire is. And then there it is in black and white. I was like,
Oh,
I was
wonderful.
really
Good job,
impressed.
darling.
Now I'm
What
setting
you
up
can
the
do-
plan how I'm gonna have that every day.
So what you can do is recite it yourself into your iPhone, and you can have it there to listen to it and play it to yourself when you go to sleep. That's what I do. Good, darling.
I'll do
All
that.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Of course, is there? Who's there? Roz. Yes, Roz. Hello, sweetheart. Talk to me.
Hi, Robina. Thank you for the teaching.
Good.
I've got a really strange question that
Okay, darling.
I've had for a while. So as I told you, I had a cat that the vet gave up on, and I brought this cat home to die. And I was playing mantras all the time and doing prayers, and the cat recovered.
Yeah. Wow. How interesting.
How interesting. So
Yes,
is
that's
that is that the mantras changing his karma? Do you
That's
think?
my
What would
feeling.
happen in that
I mean,
situation?
No, of course, this is what all the Buddhas would say, is what the Lamas would say, that the power of hooking into the Buddha's energies and invoking the Buddhas and playing the Buddha's sounds can have extraordinary results. Of course it can, sweetheart. Of course, one cannot say definitely, but that's absolutely the way they talk, that these mantras and prayers and the practices can heal because they're changing your karma. You know? Absolutely, darling. I'm very pleased for you. Good.
Yeah, no, it
Wonderful.
was amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Yes, Terry. What's your question, darling?
Oh, hello, Venerable. I'm sorry, I have a little problem with the tablet that I'm using, so it might
Okay.
run out of battery. Okay. How many different Buddhas there are altogether in the whole system
Oh,
of the Buddhist religion?
I think billions, countless.
Really?
I would say countless, but the ones that there are these, you know, they quantify this number for this and those, but I think would be countless beings are Buddhas. And then each of those Buddhas can also manifest in countless bodies. So that's kind of like, it's a bit sort of science fiction almost. But I mean, when you remember, so then the main ones, so we can quantify them into groups, you know, and say that there are the male ones, the female ones, the peaceful ones, the wrathful ones, and as many states of mind that you can imagine. There is a Buddha that's the purified manifestation of that one. So for example, Vajrayogini, this gorgeous red one, she's the purified aspect of attachment. Then there's another Buddha who's very wrathful, it's the purified aspect of anger. So really it's when we understand the psychology, we can hook into the different Buddhas. But they would be countless, there's no question. And each Buddha can manifest countless of their own bodies. So it's kind of like numberless Buddhas. You would say that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Who else then? People? Any questions?
Ross, you have a question for a while, Ross?
Rose has answered already. She answered already. She asked it already.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Was that another Rose? No? Rose already asked. Unless you have a second one, Rose, no?
No, that was it.
Okay, darling. Anybody else last? Yes, Alona.
Venerable, it's not in the topic, but you know, His Eminence Jado Rinpoche,
Yes.
he's coming to Stockholm. I got
Uh-huh.
the email from Yeshe Norbu,
Which Lama is it? Which Lama is it?
Jado
Which
Rinpoche,
Lama?
His
Spell the word.
Eminence
Spell the word. Spell his name.
Jado Rinpoche.
Oh, is he really? Oh, this is amazing. It's so special. This is incredible. He's a very special holy being. He's one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's gurus. He's one of my gurus. That's very, very, very special, Alona.
I got
If he teaches
email,
it-
he's coming to Stockholm.
I heard you. So then
Oh, sorry.
you had better be there.
I signed up. His teaching is going to
Good.
be on Lama Atisha's, but he said for Jul Mala. What is those
Wonderful.
teachings? That's my question. What is it about?
I don't know. What was the name of the text? One of Atisha's texts. What's the text called?
But he said for Jul Mala.
I've no idea, but I'm sure it's perfect. I've no idea. There's hundreds of texts. That's Atisha. This is perfect. Is he giving any empowerments? Does it say?
I don't know.
Does it say?
I just,
Okay,
I don't know,
where's
I've
he
read,
going? Who's invited him? Who has invited him? Which center, darling?
Session4.
Oh, it's the FPMT center. Good. This is very good. Very special, darling. When is he coming?
2nd of June.
When is he coming? Good. Fantastic. You're so fortunate. Go. Okay. That's it. All right. Good,
Yes.
darling. I'm very happy for you. Okay. Thank you, sweetheart. Who else, people? Questions? About death, rebirth? I think, I mean, we've got one more day, but I don't know, we might need it. I think we don't need it, frankly. I think we don't need it, Lars. I think we've covered everything, really. We could go on forever. We've covered the main things. The book is there. The practices are there. But, you know, you mightn't do 90% of them. So what we can also talk about a bit now, we've got this 25 minutes, is so you do the practices. First you start, I mean, the practices start now, like Nadeep Mandina's question. You start living your life, abide by the laws of karma, you know, live in vows, do your purification every day, keep your bodhisattva vows. If you do practices, keep your tantric vows. If you've got a highest yoga practice tantra, make sure you incorporate your sadhana into the state of death. All of these techniques are there. All of the tools are there. It's up to how much you've got those tools in your toolkit. And you just go every day, remembering you could die today. All you can do is this: preparing for your life, preparing to be happy, and then you're programming yourself for the future. But that's what you're doing. Even without thinking about it, you're preparing yourself for the future. So you might as well be conscious of it, you know, the future of this life and the future once you leave this life. So it's a long-term view. And the more, like anything, the more long-term view we have in anything we do, the more relaxed we can be about it. And then you realize more and more with karma, as opposed to the view we tend to have that's kind of all just kind of cross your fingers and hope for the best, that we create the causes. We have to create the causes. We are the boss. No one sends us here or sends us there. It's not random. It's not bad luck or good luck. It's logical. So the more we can be in touch with the process of karma, the more we can relax about it, you know. This is the idea. And then the more we are qualified to help others. The little dog, the mouse, the ant, your grandmother. That's the essence of all of it, people, honestly. And the more you understand anything, the less fear there is. When you don't understand something, then there's fear. Can you imagine not knowing how to drive and someone putting you behind the wheel on a freeway with cars going 150 kilometers an hour? You would have a complete mental breakdown, obviously, because you haven't got wisdom. So as you get the wisdom, then you don't have fear. This is really powerful. The more you understand death, the more you understand the process, the more you understand karma, the less fear, and you'll live your life with a happy mind, ready for whatever happens. Yes, Christine.
Yes, good evening. I think I remember last year you said many times at the end of the teaching, may I dream that I dream? Is it a way that to be aware that when we are sleeping and dreaming in this subtle time that nothing is
real?
real?
I understand. Very good. Okay. What that's about, because dreams is our subtle mind, and we can see it's kind of weird and we're not in charge of dreams and we flit from pillar to post and we've got no control over it. So a really nice practice, and this is related to emptiness actually, to think when you go to sleep, you say to yourself, when I'm dreaming, may I be conscious that I am dreaming. So that's all. So while you're in the dream, to be conscious that you are dreaming.
So,
do you hear the point?
To be conscious that nothing is real. So that...
Wait a minute. No, I'm not even saying that yet first.
Okay.
I'm getting a very simple point first. The aspiration is, may I see my dreams as dreams, simply meaning, and then we'll go into what that means, simply meaning that when you are dreaming, you go, wow, this is interesting, I'm dreaming. Most of the time we are involved in the dream, and then you wake up and you go, oh, that was just a dream. So it's to be aware that you're in a dream. Are you hearing that point first?
Yes, and then during the process, you'll be able to recognize that too. That is, no, go on, sorry.
Just don't go ahead, just go one step at a time. Okay. So why that's beneficial is because we can use that ability in our daily life. They use it as an analogy for living your life. They say life is like a dream. Life is like, there's these lovely phrases from the Vajrakata Sutra, I think. All the different similes that Buddha uses, like a dewdrop, like a dream, or like a cloud, that things, just kind of things move, things aren't so heavy as we think. So practicing being conscious of your dreams is just a way to get used to the feeling of being in charge of our mind, and then applying that in our daily lives. So of course, when we get advanced and have realized emptiness, and we can be conscious in our dreams, and the greatest yogis can even go into the dream mind and totally use it to get enlightened very quickly, or to get realizations. There's no question about that. So it's just a good practice. Do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes, so it's also in order not to be too serious in our life, just to realize that everything is a dream. That's
okay. So not be too serious. That can sound like a bit cynical. It doesn't. It means, you're right though. You're exactly right. It means when the good things happen, what happens is attachment takes over and we grasp at it. We believe it's permanent. We believe finally I've got happiness. We get all overexcited and grasp. And then when it crashes down and something goes wrong, then we grasp at the despair. So we're kind of going from up and down, grasping at them as real, as permanent and inherent. And this is why suffering of daily life. So the more we can use the analogy, it's like a dream, we can still experience it, but it won't make us crazy. Our attachment will become less, our grasping will become less, our seeing things as impermanent will grow, and we'll be able to navigate life in a better, more skillful, wise way.
okay.
You understand?
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Good, sweetheart. Who else? Yeah, I know many people had that experience. And I was a little girl, I had that quite often. I'd be dreaming, and everybody's got their own experience. Be quite regular. It'd be dreams, and if I didn't like the dream, a red or green kind of doctor's couch would manifest, a kind of high couch. I'd lie down on it and count 10, and I'd wake up. That was my method if I didn't like the dream. But sometimes I would do that and I thought I'd woken up, but I was still in a dream. So I got a bit tricky, But now I can't do it now. It was only when I was little. What else, people? Any questions? So what haven't I covered, do you think? I mean, I really feel, I'm not going to cheat you of more time. Our next teaching was February the 6th and whatever it was. When was the next teaching after that? When was our next session after this one?
The next would be next Thursday at 7. Do we need that?
Apart from that, when was the next one?
The next Thursday, February 9.
I know that. I'm asking you the next one after that, dear.
Oh yeah, that's going to be.
I haven't got you down. No, I haven't got you down for the 9th. We don't have any more. We do not have any more. That's a mistake. We won't have another one, okay?
All
Sorry
right.
to disappoint you. You've done the topic.
Yes.
It's over. But we don't need more. It's okay. The next one is the 2nd of March, okay?
Yeah,
that's what I got
it.
you down for.
Yes,
That'll do. So we've still got 15 minutes, but I think we've covered pretty much everything, roughly speaking. It's good enough, I think, Lars. So you need to ask me more questions, though. It's really helpful to have questions, I think. Any old question, doesn't matter. What to do when your aunt in front of you, anything at all. Yes, Terry.
What do Buddhism say about, or is there like?
Can't hear you, darling. What did you say, Terry? All I can see is your nice thing hanging around your neck. I can't see your face at all.
No.
Now I can see you upside down. Very nice. Here you are, right way up. What's your question?
Is there a concept in Buddhism for the state where you go in case you, my battery died?
Okay, goodbye. Okay, she'll come back soon. Go on, people. Any other questions? Yes, Alona.
When I had this experience at some point, I had a diagnosis from the doctor, and I thought the life is over. And I had this the mind was in such a dark place. I have never experienced anything like that. Is that a grasping, or is that like what?
It is, darling. What do you mean alone? I mean, you heard you're going to die and you're freaked out. That's pretty common, isn't it?
Yeah. Is that grasping that we talk about it and the teachings? Like, is that's the fear and grasping that to the body, that what we're talking about, it arises?
No, I think it's death. No, the way they talk about at death, as the process starts, this grasping kicks in, and it's very primordial and very intense. So of course, any fear you have is rooted in grasping. So yes, of course it'll be like that. But but it's more subtle. It's much more subtle, darling. But any grasping, when anything goes bad, of course we have freaked out, because attachment doesn't like bad things. Attachment only wants lovely things, doesn't it? And of course, there's no way in the world we want to die because we're so grasping at this person. That's why it's so powerful when we get sick and we have these problems, that we can just remind ourselves, wow, look at that, I'm impermanent. And that's why one of the most powerful practices, this is the real point, Alona, is to remember every day that I'm impermanent and I could die today. Lama Zopa says best to think, I will die today, and it sounds shocking in an ordinary world, but it doesn't make you afraid. It gives you a wake-up call. So if it's a wake-up call you get, then it's fantastic, But it's heavy, because we see everything as grasping. I always make it this story about a friend of mine who's a Buddhist, and her husband had got very bad cancer. You can turn yourself off again, Alona. Nothing more to say. Me chatting away again. That's right. So this friend of mine, a Buddhist, this shows how deep it is, this grasping at things as permanent. Her husband, they divorced, and then he got this terrible cancer. So she went back to live with him to help him die. He had 2 months to live. They divorced, right? So she was doing his prayers every day, helping him die. Well, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, he didn't die. In other words, he became a living person. As Lama Zopa says, we divide the world into living people and dying people, which of course is completely absurd. So there they both were, grasping at this idea that he was a dying person, and he didn't bloody die. So she had to leave him again. So we're ridiculous. Are you understanding my point? We even grasp at a dying person as permanent. But he became a living person again. So you can't even guarantee that. Okay? So we have to get used to this idea that we are this living person. But what we mean when we say I'm a living person, we mean we've got a future ahead of us. So that's why when you meet dying people, we freak out. We can't talk to them. We can't look at them, because we think a dying person doesn't exist. They're horrible, I remember reading one time years ago in Time magazine about death, and this CEO of some company, he was quite young, he got one of those diseases where you die slow, you die slowly. So he thought, well, there's no reason to tell anybody, but he decided he'd tell his board of directors. Well, they fired him. Who wants a dying person running your company, because we got all this fear. We're so ridiculous. And as Lama Zopa says, living people die before dying people every day. But we can see it's just this concept we make up. And every one of us sitting here now, we believe we are a living person. We believe it utterly. Meaning, I've got a life tomorrow, and I'm going to be here next week, and I'll be here next year, and I'll be here in 5 years' time. We believe it with absolute certainty. So this is the most powerful one to counteract. When you can think, well, I could die today. It's not meant to make us freaked out. It's like, it's the reverse. It'll actually make you wake up and make the most of today, not waste it. And that's the problem when we think things are permanent. So for example, I use this ridiculous example, but it's a good one. Like even you just go away to a nice hotel for go to the beach for a weekend, in this fancy hotel, there's beautiful restaurants. Think about this. And it's only 2 days. Think about this. It's only 2 days. Now, you don't say, oh, why should I go? It's only 2 days. It's not forever. I won't bother going. No, because it's only 2 days, you make the most of it. Because it will end in 2 days. You don't wake up on Saturday morning in the fancy hotel. Oh, I can't be bothered going anywhere today. I'll go back to sleep. No way. Because it's only 2 days, because you could die in 2 days, you make the most of it rather than being panic struck. This is really a powerful point. So make the most of every day instead of, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I can't be bothered. Then you get less depressed, you get less grasping. Life is more vibrant, you know. I remember telling one woman on one of the teachings, freaking out all the time, she said, that her husband could die. What'll I do, she said. Well, I said, tell yourself that he will die. Not, oh, he's not going to really die. Of course he's going to bloody die. So tell yourself that he will die, but you don't know when. So then you'll make the most of it instead of panicking about it. He's alive at the moment. As I said, then you make the most of his presence. You make the most of the relationship. You learn not to fight and get angry because he could die. And then when you wake up in the morning and he's still warm and toasty, it's a bonus. And you make the most of the next day. So it's a good attitude to think that I could die today, not meant to make you freak out. It's meant to be a wake-up call to not waste your life. And that, Madina, is the key point. When you have this, you have energy and enthusiasm every day. But it takes time, because this grasping at permanent me is one of the deepest delusions we have. It's not the subtlest delusion. It's not nearly as subtle as grasping at inherent me, but it's a powerful grasping, very ancient. I mean, technically, we know we will die, but we don't feel that we will die. We have no realization of it. So it's quite subtle. It's quite heavy, you know. So we just have to practice. I could die today. That's why you go to bed when you go to bed, you think as well, if I wake up in the morning, may I get out of bed, make the most of it. So you think like this. There's a sense of urgency. It's again, another analogy, the same as the hotel for 2 days. I went away for a while one time to Puerto Rico. I remember this example on one of my editing retreats. It was the middle of winter. It was lovely. The sun was shining. It was this little resort on the south coast of Puerto Rico, this little island with this lovely place. And it was gorgeous. Now, this is the point. It was 9 weeks. Every day I looked at the calendar, there was 1 day closer to having to leave. And I was going to go to Boston after that was like 20 degrees below freezing or something. I forget. So it was like, because it was 9 weeks, I never forgot that it was impermanent. If I just thought, oh, well, and I forgot that I had to leave, and I'd fight with the next door neighbor and get upset and get all possessive about the gas stove and the cushions and the couch and sue the people around the corner because I forgot it was impermanent. So you imagine if I forgot that, and then after 9 weeks, I remember Rita, the lady who ran the building, would come and drag me out screaming, I don't want to go, because I forgot it was impermanent. So remembering that everything is impermanent, you make the most of it. That's the point. This is the way to live your life. We've got to remind ourselves, though, because the instinct of grasping at permanent me is so primordial. And it's a powerful stepping stone to realizing the emptiness of the inherent me. That's the subtlest one. This is absolutely vital to have within our practice every day. Without that, you just grasp at everything as permanent, you know. It's a disaster. So I think that's about it, Lars. So what should we do for our last 8 minutes? Or we can even end early. You have to keep remembering you get your money's worth with me because I talk very fast. Even though I'm speaking very slowly right now, you still get your money's worth, all right? So any other questions, people? I think it's a point to stop on. And I really encourage you to get this book. That's all, because it's packed with information, packed with advice. It's practical. It's a handbook. And it's got these wonderful practices in it as well that you can have, you know. What else is there, Lars? What do you think? Anybody in the text in the chat?
No questions in the chat. Any final questions or good time to say thank you, everybody? And obviously about money's worth, we also invite your generous donations to the center. Just mentioning a way to support.
You must support the center, yeah. Support the center. Well, I didn't talk about me. I meant support the center, yeah. That's good. Thank you, Lars. I think everybody said thank you, everybody. Happy to do from my new house in New York. It's a bit chilly here, maybe 2 degrees, not very cold. There's been no snow yet, really, almost no snow. It's interesting. Don't know, a little bit of snow, not much. And the tree is bare at my window there. So just telling you my new view in New York. Okay. So yeah, I'll be there. I'll see you next on the 2nd of March. It's about a month. All right.
Thank you.
And I will be. I'm going to be in Europe in September, but I'm going to be in Spain, UK, Scotland, and England, Spain, France, and the Swedish center in Stockholm has invited me, but it's a bit last minute. I don't know if I can squeeze it in. I might just come for one night. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. But that's in September, and I could easily die before then. I could even, who knows? But if I am alive, I will come. All right. No, and I won't be in Zurich. No one's invited me to Zurich, but that's okay. I've got you on Zoom. I'm only going to be traveling once a year now. That's enough. Yeah, something like that. Okay, people. Thank you so much. We dedicate all this work we've done together, all these thoughts we've had, all these seeds we've planted. Be delighted that nothing goes astray, that we're this work in progress. So we go one step at a time, developing ourselves, molding our minds, as Lama Zopa says, into the mind of a Buddha, one step at a time, okay? Being delighted. And we dedicate all these seeds we've planted so that they do ripen as our Buddhahood, no matter how long it takes. So we then can be of benefit to sentient beings. This is why we're doing this. And make compassion and bodhicitta grow and grow and grow in the hearts of all. And may our lamas live long, long lives, because the world needs them badly. That's it. All right. That's it, Lars.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you for coming back to us continuously. Thank you very much. We appreciate your presence and your fast talking, your slow talking, and anything.
My swearing, my rough words, my rude words.
And your encouragement and love for and concern for all of us. And if we don't die, we'll meet again on March 2nd.
Good. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you, darlings.